All right, so I'm just waking up and I'm thinking about photography, right? I'm thinking about my vision. I'm thinking about the way I see things and how I've learned how to use layers in my compositions throughout the years. How did I see? How did I look around me and see these things and put things together, right? When I look at this photo I took of Mexico, right? This guy at the top of the mountain, he's exclaiming, "Mexico, Mexico," and he's got his arms outstretched just like Jesus has in the background hanging. And you know, this composition, it came with lots of clicks. You know, I wish I had the other photos on my iPad. I delete them off. I just have the one. But you know, on the contact sheet, you can see I took 100 pictures probably. Who knows how many pictures? But each picture was leading up to this moment. I was framing from above, looking down, using Jesus while he was downstairs, right? I got a picture of him when he was down here, looking from here down to there. Then he came up the ladder. I walked up the ladder. I was curious. This guy came up. He was drinking. He was looking at me, excited. And he was doing a little dance. He did a little flip. He was rolling all around. I got the whole behind the scenes. Maybe I should roll the behind the scenes of these things as I think about them. I don't know. I'll do it eventually. But I'm just thinking today, right? What's the secret sauce? How do you layer things, right? What's the secret sauce? What's the secret sauce to layering? I don't know. You just see. You look around and the serendipity takes over. I can't tell you how to layer stuff. You know, no one's going to be able to teach you how to see. I think that that's something that you got to just go out and do. There doesn't really come to a point where, you know, I can give you an A, B, C or a 1, 2, 3. You kind of just see. I mean, this composition, it came through intuition. There's no light. There's no crazy light. There's a storm cloud. The storm cloud's rolling over in the background of the mountains. So I combined the mountain range, the gesture, Jesus Christ, the dog. Everything here in the composition was intentional through my sight and my vision initially, right? I was looking around and I noticed these things, and I combined these elements. But really, the intuition and the instinct to snap the shutter as his arms outstretched was the money on top, right? And then everything combined with that. This bag, it's perfectly in frame, right? Jesus is sitting upon his shoulder. The dog came around the corner. The storm clouds rolling over, right? There's a lot of things here that combine to make this composition interesting. And I think that layering, it's really just about being there, being present, spending some time with the people. Like this shot, I spent a lot of time with the guy, right? I spent a lot of time with the guy. I didn't just, take the picture and leave, right? You spend time with these people when you take these pictures, right? Like this shot, okay? Layering, right? You spend time. Guess what? They spent the whole day with me. I sat there at those rocks, laying back like a paysan, chilling by the water, swimming. They were peeling fish, or what is it, little oysters, little clams off the rocks, and we were eating just live fish right there, little squids swimming around, whatever those fish were. And they were showing me their tradition, right? They tied this watermelon up on a rock, and that watermelon was sitting in the Mediterranean Sea all morning long, maybe even overnight. Who knows how long they kept it in there, but it was freezing cold using that water as the natural refrigerator. And when they pulled the watermelon out and they started to cut, I stood upon this rock looking down, and I had noticed this man swimming in the background, right? This guy. And I was trying to frame these two people on the outer edges of the frame so that we could create that layered dynamic composition of the watermelon, creating that triangle. And this kind of stuff happens with time spent. To make a layered composition, to make a layered picture. Maybe the moral of the story is this. Maybe the secret sauce is this. You interact with people. You don't just take a picture and leave. When you get a layered composition, half the time in these pictures, I spent some time working that scene. I spent some time photographing. I didn't just take the picture and leave, right? These kids. How did I get these kids lined up in this crazy dynamic layered sort of composition, right? What did I do to make this happen? I remember hanging around these kids for a while. First, they were playing by the graveyard. There's a graveyard right nearby. We were walking around there. They had a donkey. And then they went to this little empty frame, and I followed them along, and I was doing pull-ups on this thing. I was playing here, right? I was doing pull-ups on these bars. These kids were playing. This Israeli settlement sits on the wall there, and then the border is lying right here. So these kids, these Palestinian kids, they're playing on this empty frame right on the border in the desert of Jericho. And I captured the dynamic composition through my play. through me doing pull-ups on that bar, through me hanging out with these kids, and then I took the picture. I mean, seriously, it does come like that. Sure, you can see things and frame things and put a frame within a frame, and you can use those compositional shit. But that's intuitive. Everybody knows that. Everyone can do that. It's a matter of being the person that goes into these communities and actually spends the time. I spent all day with these kids that day. I remember walking around the desert. I think we went up to the mountainside. They were showing me the mountains. I'm curious. There's people all over that can share with you their culture. It doesn't matter if it's a kid, an adult, anyone in between. I mean, seriously, you can go around and interact with anybody. And I think that's what's beautiful about photography. And I mean, when you photograph the youth like this, yeah, maybe it is a little bit easier, right? Maybe this is an easier shot to get because you're photographing with the youth, comparing to the shot that I got of the Italians, right? Here, this is another layered photograph. This is my grandmother. How about that? My grandmother, rest in peace, Mimi. She was an amazing woman. And I photographed this picture of her. Maybe not the most flattering picture, but guess what? I'm a street photographer, right? We don't pose each other, we just take the shot. And so I took this picture, and yeah, I mean, I noticed the gesture, right? The gesture of the hand and her red lips and the people in the background filling that part of the frame and making these relationships. You place the camera in the position where you know the people will line up in these compositions. It's a matter of intuition and where to place the camera. I placed the camera close to her face on that bottom left corner because I knew her arm was going to break the frame up. You look for those things to break the frame up, and these things happen naturally through your vision. They happen naturally through your vision, and where you place the camera determines all of that, right? Where you place the camera determines all of that. My first rainbow photograph, I positioned this man on the left-hand side because I knew the rainbow was on the right. The guy that came over leaping with his umbrella was a lucky part. This woman being revealed in the window was a lucky part of the situation. It's a matter of placing your camera and placing the subject in a position, and then the other magical things kind of just happen along with it, right? This is just a matter of me being playful, me being at the scene, and me observing, right? Positioning of the camera, two subjects, left and right, positioning of the camera, being aware of your background, layering the composition from the gesture of his hand and the vision of him looking towards that side of the frame. Yahya in the back sitting on the bed. How do you place them together in this composition? It's simple. You put one on the left and one on the right. When you got two subjects, you can divide the frame like this, okay? But I like more people in the frame. I like having the cluttered frame. I like having lots of chaos, I like positioning my camera in a place where I don't know what I'm gonna get. Like for instance, at the playground. The youth is a real easy subject to play with when it comes to layers. And when I stumbled upon this scene in Dharavi, I was extremely, extremely happy and ecstatic. I was spending maybe 30 minutes in this park playing around with the kids, jumping around, taking pictures. They had this toy gun here and the boy's gesture looking up, the spiral composition, the Band-Aid on her forehead up there. Everything just falls into place when you position the camera, low angle, looking up towards that blue sky because you know that there's so many kids and people filling the frame. It's just a natural sort of intuition where you position the camera. Really, it is. Similarly to those kids playing with this composition, looking down at the people working with the garbage, or looking up rather, and their hands falling into place. I think when you follow the hand, you can put everything else together. Just follow the people's hands, right? Follow the people's hands. Follow their hands, follow their gestures, follow the people's hands, and I think that you'll be able to figure out how to layer and how to frame. I think the hand gesture, for me personally, it's something that I've always looked for, and then you can relate those hands to that background or those feet to that background and make those relationships in a simple and concise way where your vision is succinct and it's easy to read. And I think that's the goal with photography. Everything's easy to read. This newspaper's easy to read, everything's easy to read when it comes to a good sort of layered picture, right? I think that's what happens. You gotta be on your toes, right? The car breaks down. What do you do to make this composition interesting? Okay, I frame the car here at the bottom right, and then they're pushing the car up here. I get the blue background, the clouds, the mountain, boom. You gotta think on your feet. What could I have done here? Imagine if I just framed them right there without this car in the foreground. It would have been a boring composition. But when you think of the foreground, middle ground, background, you start to see like this. you start to see like this. And that's my advice for anyone that wants to learn how to layer compositions here early in the morning. I'll share more whatever I think of in terms of photography. I'll look at my pictures like this. Maybe this is a fun thing. All right, peace. Time to go.